Fantasy football is no different than so many other things here in the world. We're all looking for the sale. We're looking for the cheapest price possible. We're looking for that blue light special. Who are some of those late round running backs that could be a huge benefit to our fantasy football team? Let's find out. What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. We're talking discounts, right? Talking cheap. Everybody likes things cheaper. Nobody wants to overpay for anything these days, and fantasy football is no different. In this episode, we're talking about a few running backs who you're going to be able to get really late in your fantasy football drafts that may actually have some value week one, but could potentially turn into huge value later in the season. Before I get into that real quick, please go over there and check out our websites right there at the top of the screen, thefantasyheadliners.com. Our draft guide is available for pre-order. We have been putting in so much time and effort into this draft guide. I seriously believe this will be something that will be able to help you dominate and win multiple fantasy football championships this season. So make sure you go check that out. Also, we're right around the corner. We're giving away this autographed Juju Smith-Schuster jersey on May 31st. If you're interested in entering into the contest, head over to my Twitter, at FNTSY Headliners on Twitter. It's my pinned tweet, the top of my profile. There's a few short steps, free steps, to help you enter in for that jersey. We'll be giving away shortly. Looking forward to doing that. But now, let's talk about a few names that we need to be targeting late in our fantasy football drafts because they could have some serious running back value. First up is going to be Alexander Mattison, the running back out of Boise State, now a member of the Minnesota Vikings, and he's going almost undrafted in a lot of leagues, and he probably will be the closer we get to the season, unless he really starts to break out and show some people something there in the preseason. Right now, his ADP, according to fantasyfootballcalculator.com, is 165, so literally the end of your drafts, and he is the clear-cut number 2 option right now in Minnesota behind Dalvin Cook. And a lot of people's heartburn with Dalvin Cook is that he can't stay healthy. He's missed 18 games over his last 2 seasons. And then we also just gained 140 carries left behind by Latavius Murray. Alexander Mattison is somebody who's used to getting a lot of workload. I mean, he's capable of huge workhorse numbers. He had 302 carries last season for Boise State. Now, the biggest problem for Minnesota has been their offensive line here for a couple years. They addressed it slightly in the draft, drafting Garrett Bradbury to try to shore up that interior offensive line. It's still a below average offensive line in Minnesota. But if Dalvin Cook goes down, if he cannot stay healthy again, Alexander Mattison could be in line for an absolute huge workload. Now, he's scored 29 touchdowns over his last 2 seasons in college, averaged over 4.7 yards per carry. He's going to see a little bit of work to start the season regardless. Dalvin's not going to go out there and play every down of every game. They're going to have to spell him at times. Alexander Mattison, as of right now, looks to be that running back. So he's somebody who gives you week 1 value, but if something happens to Dalvin Cook, this guy could be a workhorse running back for the Minnesota Vikings. Justice Hill, the Baltimore Ravens, is up next, and this is somebody who we really need to pay attention to. He's kind of a scat back, the change of pace to a Mark Ingram in that backfield of the Baltimore Ravens. Could he kind of adopt a Tariq Cohen-style-esque role for the Baltimore Ravens? It's entirely possible. And if we know anything about the Baltimore Ravens, it's that they like to run the football and that they're going to run the football an absolute butt ton. They were number 1 in the NFL in rushing attempts, number 2 in rushing yards in 2018. Yes, a lot of that is Lamar Jackson, but if this backfield can be productive, Justice Hill is somebody who could not only see carries out of the backfield, but could also be involved in the short passing game, screen plays, third downs. I mean, that's going to be what he excels at, and he was very productive in college. I really think Justice Hill is going to get an opportunity. Do I need to go out there and make sure I draft him on all of my teams? No, not really. But make sure you're keeping an eye on him, because if he gets the opportunity to touch the ball 10 to 12 times a game, that could be enough to have some serious value, not only week 1, but rest of season, especially if you're in a PPR league and he's catching passes out of the backfield. Jaylen Samuels, the running back / tight end, whatever he is for the Pittsburgh Steelers, is up next. And he's going to be involved in this offense this year. He's familiar with it. He's kind of gone behind James Conner before we saw it at the end of last season. He helped a lot of teams right there down the stretch, helping you get into the fantasy playoffs even. And like I said, he's familiar with the offense, and they want to keep James Conner fresher. They don't want to go out there and give him 300 carries, 70 touches, and have the dude hurt by week 8. They need James Conner if they're going to win football games, and they understand that we may see a little bit more of a committee this year in Pittsburgh. And right now, with Jaylen Samuels' ADP being in triple digits still, 104 overall is Jaylen Samuels. Last year when James Conner went down, like I said, he filled in pretty well there towards the end of the year, had 63 total touches, 370 yards, 2 touchdowns over the last 4 games of the season. He's a great pass catcher. They're able to put him out and spread him out wide if they need to, put him in the slot. He's able to be a little bit versatile, and this offense, it's going to look a little bit different, right? I mean, there's no Le'Veon Bell, there's no Antonio Brown. They've brought in a few pieces. James Washington will take a step forward, and Dante Moncrief. There's a lot of new names there, but they're familiar with Jaylen Samuels, and he's familiar with this game style, this gameplay in Pittsburgh. That offensive line is elite. It's a top 10 offensive line there in Pittsburgh. We've always kind of talked about it's plug and play, right? Whoever that running back, behind that offensive line, the Pittsburgh Steelers, more than likely is going to be productive. It's been like that for a very long time. If Jaylen Samuels gets that opportunity to get the touches every game, or if something were to happen to James Conner, all of a sudden we're looking at Jaylen Samuels as a possible high-end running back 2 on a weekly basis. He's somebody I'm paying attention to. I'm not reaching for him. I'm not having to have him, but it's definitely a name to watch, because if he's sitting there in one of the last picks of your draft, it's not a bad choice just to have sitting on your bench as a flyer, because you never know. Something happens with James Conner, you all of a sudden have yourself either a huge trade piece or a solid backup running back on your bench. Donta Foreman up next, running back, Houston Texans. Do not forget the name Donta Foreman. Just because you didn't hear it last year, don't forget back in 2017, a lot of people were talking about that he could possibly take the backfield away from Lamar Miller. Then he tore his Achilles. We didn't see him in 2018. Now, looks like he's back. He's healthy. And in his absence, Lamar Miller really hasn't done anything to run away with this backfield. He's kind of just been He hasn't really been bad. Hasn't really been good. He's kind of just been serviceable, I guess we could call it. But if he starts slow, or if they give Donta Foreman more and more opportunities, this is definitely a guy that could earn this job a few weeks into the season. The biggest problem with the Texans has been their offensive line. They really haven't ever put a whole lot into that offensive line. Well, they addressed it a little bit in the draft, not as much as they probably should have, but they are an improved offensive line. However, as far as the league goes, they'll still be a below average unit. But Donta Foreman adds a little bit more power to this backfield. Kind of somebody that can break a few tackles. He's not quite as explosive and fast maybe as Lamar Miller, but he is somebody that can get that extra yardage, fight for that extra yardage. Definitely somebody that we need to pay attention to. Like I said, if Lamar Miller starts slow, or they slowly work Donta Foreman into the mix, this is somebody who not only has week 1 value, but could be the starting running back of the Houston Texans a few weeks into the season. Don't forget about him. Don't count on him week 1, but he's definitely a name that we need to pay attention to and not forget about here for fantasy football. All right, so those are a few names we need to pay attention to towards the ends of our drafts here this year. But who are a couple other names? I could have added other names to this list, but I want to make this interactive. We're one of the most interactive channels on YouTube. I want to hear some of the names that you may have. Who are you looking to draft towards the end of your drafts? Who are some huge value picks at the running back position? Let's have a conversation about it. Let's see if we can find some more names. Looking forward to doing that with you guys. Really appreciate all the support. Like I said, go check out our draft guide on our website. It's available for $19.99. A reasonable price for the amount of information you're going to get. It's absolutely crazy. League winner, hands down for sure. Greatly appreciate the support once again. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your week. Have a great holiday weekend, and we'll talk to you guys later. Thanks.